For 13 months, I was asked, when's your wedding? Or in Minnesota, they would say, so, when you getting hitched? It's a big day. The day was October 10th, just a few weeks ago. And for me, it was my day that I was filled with utter gratitude. It was a feeling that I've never had before in my life. And I would like to share some of the experiences with you. Just a little bit about the preparations, about the ceremony, and the after party. It was a lot of planning. It was difficult to plan from far away. It took place in Minnesota on my parents' land, just south of the town I grew up in, which is called St. Charles. About 3,000 people in the town. And the land is about 100 acres that my dad has been painstakingly restoring. He's converted some land to native prairie grass and is now in the Conservation Reserve Program. There's a small pond on it and a wooded area as well. And you'll be able to get glimpses of the land as I go through some of the photos. It was also a green wedding, and what I mean by that is the food that we served our guests was 90% organic and 100% local from the farmer's market. The flowers were all grown locally. I actually went out to a Hmong garden and cut some of them myself. And we just made efforts. Our gift to our guests was to offset all of their travel emissions, whether it be plane or car. We had guests from all around the country. So it was greatly beneficial for them and for us to offset their emissions by investing in wind power turbines around the U.S. So the day of the wedding arrived, and it was one of those days where you're trying to get everything done and your bridesmaids are running around. We had some added difficulty. If any of you have been to or have ever lived in Minnesota, you will know that the weather changes at the drop of a hat. And I was obsessively looking at the weather report for the week before because they were predicting snow and rain. So I went ahead and got my bridesmaids some tights and we bundled up. It ended up being a beautiful day, but it was freezing cold. So we got some heating pads that we strapped to our stomachs and to our backs, and we put little hand warmers in our shoes and in our gloves, and we made do. We had fun with it. You can kind of see my nylons that I had to wear in that picture. So the ceremony arrived. These are pre-pictures. And these are the groomsmen. The ceremony arrived, and we walked down a large prairie. We were kind of hiding in the background, and the groomsmen walked out first, and the bridesmaids walked out second. And then my dad and I walked down, and it was a memory that I will always share with my father, just waiting in the prairie with him, and the veil was blowing, and it was just a wonderful experience. And I could see the land spread out before me. It was decorated with little crystals. The pergola before us was decorated. And I just noticed while I was walking up, I didn't feel nervous. I had a sense of calm, even though everybody, 200 people, were staring at me as I walked down the aisle. It was a confidence that I've actually never had before, to feel that amount of love and support that no matter what happens, on this day or in the future, I will always have that support with me. So we walked down the aisle and we had our solemn experience of getting married. It wasn't an extremely religious ceremony, it was more spiritual in nature, and it fit with Paul and I's beliefs. And we had two readings. One was a poem that was read by my grandmother that was entitled Paul and Lacey. And it was a wonderful introduction to our guests about the history of how Paul and I met and some stories about both of us growing up. after the readings and the vows, which Paul and I had both written, and Paul knocked me out of the water with the vows, actually. He was wonderful. He touched on very personal aspects of myself, and it was great to hear those words from him. After the ceremony, after we walked down, we had a surprise for our guests. And after walking down the ceremony, we walked back up, and instead of ushering our guests out, we went to a small box that was hidden near the top of the ceremony. And as the handbell choir was playing, and this is my family, my brothers and my moms, we released doves. And it was a big surprise to our guests. Everyone said, "Oh, oh!" They watched them fly away. And after the ceremony, we had pictures, because we didn't do many with families before the ceremony. This is my mom's side of my family, and cousins and grandparents, and everybody was there together. After we made it through the pictures, we went on to play some games. And we had outdoor games. A lot of us roughed it, even though it was freezing cold. And we had beverages available for our guests during the happy hour. And people mingled. I learned how to play croquet at my wedding. I don't think everyone can say that. Finally, as dinner began, my dad gave a speech, and he made a point of sharing with my guests the importance of the land, because it really was our church, and we wanted to share a little bit about what that meant to us. And finally, our surprise for the guests was after the first romantic dance and after the father and daughter dance, I went back to the catering trailer, changed my dress very secretively. And as everybody was on the dance floor, Paul and I ran out and we performed our salsa dance, which we had been taking lessons for a year. So after those 13 months of preparing, I was left with some of the happiest moments of my life. And I was left with a husband who wakes me up every morning with a hug and laughingly tells me how much he loves my hair in the morning. Thank you.